could ask you to put that into a silent mode. We appreciate that, and if you'd like to speak about an item on the agenda or not on the agenda, this beautiful young lady to my left will be happy to take your slip, and we'll call you up. And you have 3 minutes. Okay, with that, I think we'll do our pledge. And Miss Chris, could you please lead us in?
Be my honor. Please face our flag, place your right hand over your heart, and follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. With that, let's move. Can we get a roll call, I guess?
Sure. Commissioner Wolf?
Present.
Commissioner Rickstad?
Present.
Commissioner Hicks? Commissioner Brzee?
Here.
Commissioner Beck?
Here.
Vice Chair Markarian?
Present.
Chair Algauer?
Here. Okay, with that, we do the consent agenda, and we'll get minutes from the October 20th, and I was not here for that, so I'll be abstaining, but we need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented from the October 20th meeting.
Okay, we have a second?
I'll second that.
Yeah, we have 3 people here, Ben, for that meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like we have a quorum for the approval of those minutes, but we can certainly table that for the next meeting and then bring it back.
Okay, so we'll table that. Okay, so let's just move into it. Let's see, the first item we have is an architectural review of a 70-unit detached condominium project.
That'll be Christian presenting.
Okay, Chris, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. So today I bring before you item number 2. It's case number 155-LUCR-ARC. It's an architectural review for a 70-unit detached condominium project associated with tract map 18174, located at 12373 17th Street. The applicant is R.B. Ruxton and is here tonight. A little bit of background for you. The tentative tract map and conditional use permit were originally approved on August 2nd, 2006 as a one-lot subdivision with a conditional use permit to permit 67 detached condominiums on 9 acres. After 36 months, the approval for the conditional use permit expired, with a new conditional use permit being granted in 2017. The tentative tract map received a series of automatic extensions, as well as a 36-month extension from the planning department and a 24-month extension from the city council. Further, AB 1561 creates an effective expiration date of May 2nd, 2023 for the conditional use permit and January 16th, 2023 for the tentative tract map. This is the site location. It is proposed to be on 12373 17th Street, surrounded by single-family and multifamily properties. As a part of this architectural review, the applicant proposes some minor amenity modifications. Previously approved was a pool and a clubhouse, and the proposed outdoor space now includes a playground and horseshoes for families, rather than that pool and clubhouse. The site layout features detached to 2 stories, which range from 1,782 square feet to 2,468 square feet. Each of these includes a 400 square foot garage. There are 4 different floor plans with 3 different elevation types for a total of 12 unique elevations. And the footprints are all consistent with the approved entitlements. The conceptual landscaping includes some mature trees, some smaller trees, and shrubs. But the final landscaping will have to go through the landscaping architect with the city. This is the Plan 1 floor plan. It's proposed to be 2,270 feet. These are the Monterey style elevations. These are the farmhouse elevations. Plan 2 features a 1,782 square foot, two-story floor plan. These are the Monterey elevations. These are the Craftsman elevations. Plan 3 is 2,104 square feet. Here's the farmhouse. Here's a Craftsman. Plan 4 includes 2,468 square foot, two-story. And this is the farmhouse. This is the Craftsman. So here's the farmhouse color scheme example for Plan 3. The individual units kind of, I think that there's like 12 different color palettes that are included in the staff report. So just some of the examples here. This is the 2 Craftsman examples for Plan 4 and Plan 2. And this is a Plan 1 Monterey elevation. As a part of this approval, the applicant is seeking to do their entry signage at the same time. So they have 2 wall-mounted entry signs that are approximately 7 feet by 2 feet and are going to be lit from underneath. All right, if there's any questions, the applicant is here today, so hopefully I or he can help you guys tonight.
Okay, anyone have any questions for staff at this time?
I have a question, or two. Says the subject site is RM-10M, multifamily residential, 10,000 square foot minimum. That's per lot? Each house is gonna sit on a 10,000 square foot lot?
So that's kind of, if they were to actually subdivide this, that'd be the minimum lot size, but the city allows for a multifamily, anything designated multifamily has an 8.7 unit per gross acre unit requirement.
Yeah, so if I may clarify, the RM district allows for either single-family subdivisions, which would follow the 10,000 square foot minimum lot size, or multifamily projects, which the condominium falls under. So as long as they meet the minimum density requirements, which was part of the original CUP entitlement, then the individual per unit airspace for the condos can be smaller.
Okay, that makes sense. And the last question I have is, or two, I guess, what type of fencing is around the exterior of the property, between the houses, and is this a gated community?
I believe that this is a gated community. I would have to ask the applicant to clarify, but as far as exterior fencing, it's going to be a block wall with a CMU strip, and then interior is a tan vinyl fence.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? At this time, would the applicant like to make a presentation? And if you could state your name for our records. 3 minutes? No, we don't, not with them. Go ahead.
Good evening, planning commissioners and city staff and residents. My name is Brian Berkson. I'm the project manager. I'm joined with George Alvarez, who is our VP of Land Development for Far West Industries. RB Ruxton is one of our LLCs, so Far West Industries and that are, the same as far as the project goes. Just as a kind of basic history, I've worked for Far West Industries for over 18 years. I've actually done projects here in Yucaipa before. We did a project called Parkside Village 1, and we built that one out on 7th Street, and just down the street from that we designed Parkside Village 2. It was built by another developer a few years ago. I remember the good old days when it was a trailer. City Hall was a trailer, and then the new building, beautiful building came in. Anyway, been here for a while. Just some of our recent projects, just to give you a little flavor for Far West Industries. It's a family-run business. Been in building homes for over 40 years in Southern California. Some of our recent projects include locations such as Palm Springs, Rancho Mirage, Calamasa, Signal Hill, Garden Grove, just to name a few. So most all over Southern California. We're here tonight to ask for your approval and consideration for our newest project here in Yucaipa, the 70-unit condominium, single-family detached development. Most of the existing homes in the area are basically, there's no real particular architectural style to them. They're well-developed communities with a flair of craftsmanship, and so the artisan theme suits well for fitting right into this mix. We at Far West always try to make sure that when we enter and leave a community, it is built so that it fits into the existing community and the current residents' desires, plus it leaves a long-lasting, enjoyable community for everybody. Artisan is going to incorporate 3 architectural styles, which Christian, thank you, you covered those, the farmhouse, craftsman, and Monterey styles. Just as a brief clarification, the Monterey style has the S-type roofs, shutters, faux balconies on the front elevations, stucco exterior, and light fixtures will match the architectural styles. The farmhouse style has concrete roof tiles, entry porches. One of the plans has a metal cover over the porch with wood columns and masonry base. The garage doors will have distinctive cross-braced farmhouse pattern. Windows will have all-around trim surrounds, and the stucco exterior will be incorporated with vertical lap siding on that. And then the craftsman style will incorporate concrete roof tiles with porches with wood columns and masonry bases, simulated wood shutters at the front windows. The side windows will again have all-around trim emulating the craftsman detail. We do have 4 floor plans ranging in size from 1773 up to 2468 square footage, and there's a variety, whether they're 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, some have an optional parlor, and some have a loft. So there's quite a variety. And when you take the number of color schemes with the style of homes and the number of floor plans, we're basically creating a very variety-full, enriched community. So you're not going to see just the same thing over and over. It's going to be very spread out and very, very nice at the end of the day. The other thing I wanted just to talk about quickly was the landscape plans. They are included in your packet, I understand, Kristen. We're going to have to go through the separate approval for landscape, but the wall plans you mentioned, and you wanted, you had a question about those, or you wanted clarity. What we proposed in the plan was vinyl fencing for most of the project, the interiors, and the perimeter, with the exception of 17th Street. The main street would have full block wall, 6 foot high, with a decorative, with pilasters and a decorative concrete split face block band going across the whole thing. That's what we were hoping to get approved, not having block wall around the back part of the project or the sides. And the plan, just so you know, it's in your packet that shows the whole fence plan and the different styles. They're colored in multiple colors, so it should be pretty easy to check on the legend on the right. But we're here to, lead you through it if you have any kind of specific questions. And finally, the last page of the packet does show the Artisan entry sign monument. There will be 2 of them, both just in front of 17th Street at our Rembrandt Way entryway. That's our south entryway. We have 2 entryways off of 17th. That's the main one. That's where those 2 signs would be. And they'll have spotlights from the ground to illuminate them. And with that, both George and myself are here to answer any kind of questions you have. Hopefully we can do that for you. And we appreciate your time and consideration looking at Artisan. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. I'm George Alvarez, Vice President of Land Development. There was one question or perhaps a statement regarding a guard gate, the entry gate. The original conditions of approval allow the guard gate or the entry gate. At this point in time, we're not intending to install one. I think it should be open street. So, But I just wanted to emphasize that we're not intending to offer the gate at this point in time.
So you're not putting in a gate?
Correct.
Okay. And what was the reasoning for that?
It's every time we have a gate, and we have some communities with gate, it creates homeowners problems. The gate doesn't work, it works, doesn't work. It's a maintenance issue. Homeowners Association has to pay for the maintenance after everything is said and done, and so we're trying to keep it as affordable as we can.
Okay. Okay, commissioners, who have questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Wolf?
First, thank you for a beautiful project. Anytime we can bring something into Dunlap, I think it's exciting. Is this project going to be on sewer?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we've been working on, at risk on the line improvement, and the sewers are almost complete.
Okay. And that's a big deal in the past when we've done Dunlap projects, is trying to bring in projects that are going to bring in that sewage for future projects, because most residences don't have that.
Yeah, actually, we had to improve the sewer on 17th Street as well because it was under capacity, so we put a bigger pipe on 17th Street.
Okay, thank you. And is there a sidewalk on 17th Street?
There's none now, obviously, there will be one,
There
yes.
will be one for this project. As far as parking goes, is there going to be parking anywhere on the streets? Or is all parking, where is the parking going to be?
There is, as you can see, south of the park, there's some parking stalls. The streets are wide enough that we can still park on one of the sides. We have not, thought about red curbing anything yet. And of course, every house has a two-car garage.
Okay, is that something that will be considered? And I'm only asking this for emergency vehicle purposes. Fire, ambulance, police need to come in here.
We would have to discuss that with fire, yes.
Okay.
If I may clarify, as part of the original CUP approval, including the most recent one in 2017, the interior streets or kind of the public utility easement streets within it are designed to accommodate vehicle parking and have enough travel width for emergency response vehicles. And then as you get into the individual little kind of quads or pods of those units, then those would be narrow. There wouldn't be necessarily vehicle parking within that since it's not wide enough. It's more of a private drive. And then certainly they provide parking within the driveways for the individual units where they're 18 feet or greater. And so as part of the original CUP approval and, and subsequent approvals of those entitlements, the parking requirements do meet or exceed the requirements for a condominium project. And so that was part of so they don't propose any changes as part of their requirements.
Okay. And then my last question is going to be about the block wall. So traditionally, for the past several years, when we've done projects, we've required a block wall all the way around the project. A lot of applicants come to us saying the same thing. They want to do half of a vinyl wall and some block wall or just vinyl. We don't really see any chain link fences or wood fences anymore. Everything seems to be block and vinyl. And I feel like because of you guys that, we're getting a lot more block. Is that something that you guys are opposed to?
Well, for one reason, obviously, it's a huge expense.
Right.
That it wasn't, again, trying to keep the cost as minimal as possible. If you know what's going on in the business right now, everything is going on up on a daily basis, and the costs are almost impossible to contain.
Right.
And we hope we can do it with what we think we can. So we would
So,
rather have the vinyl.
And you guys are saving money by eliminating the gates that were initially proposed.
The gate would be somewhat minimal compared to the cost of the wall.
Okay. And this is for you guys. When we approved the big project, the Kaiser and, previously the movie theater, I remember we had a discussion about what that back wall was, the south wall, in front of the, which would be back of the houses.
Right.
Do you remember that? What was that? Did we make that block or did we allow that to be vinyl?
The Yucaipa Point project, the perimeter wall fencing along the property line is a tubular steel fence. So they aren't proposing a block wall around there. So because it's a commercial site and it's on there, so it's more of just site security purposes. Whether or not property owner below wants to have a block wall, that is something that they can certainly do, but it was tubular steel fence would be the perimeter wall for that one.
What's behind this project? At the back end?
Christian pulled the area, so there is kind of a mixture of either single-family houses or multifamily development surrounding sites. So there is certainly some existing kind of fence materials that are used, and so in this case, they would provide a uniform fence for their perimeter. I do want to note just quickly as well, in terms of the citywide design guidelines, so multifamily standards does identify kind of a solid perimeter wall unless there's a view shed or something like that, or a tubular steel or something like that's there, but it does not necessarily require a blocked wall from it. The street frontage, it does have provisions for there, and so that's part of the original CUP approval, does have that decorative facing wall along 17th Street, but it does give deference to the Plan Commission on the rest of the perimeter wall, as long as it's a solid material. Not like, as an example, chain link fence would not be a suitable fence for that.
How tall will the wall be? The vinyl?
It'll be 6 feet. To provide, as it stands right now, there is chain link fences on the, in between the property, so we're proposing to improve that for privacy.
That's it for me.
I have a question about turning into the project from 17th Street. Is there gonna be a right turn, pocket lane, or is this just gonna be within the lane of travel for 17th Street?
17th is a pretty narrow street right now. As a matter of fact, our conditions of approval ask us to improve to the middle of the street, but the street is in pretty sad shape, so we're probably going to improve it all the way to the other side. But no, it's a narrow street, so there will not be it'd be a typical neighborhood street, so there will not be a turn pocket.
And then there's no way to fit a turn pocket into your side? of
Not
the
on the
lot?
existing width, not on the existing, width between property lines. No, I don't believe so.
As narrow as that street is,
It is a narrow street.
I can't see where you would even be able to get one in there.
Yeah.
All right, that was my only thing.
Okay, anyone else have any commissioners, questions for? Nope. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Do we have any public comments on that, Ben?
No comments on this project.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing and move to the commissioners. Commissioners, anyone have? Lloyd, start with you. You have anything? Okay, Bart? Chris? Mr. Wolf?
Nope, no comments.
Can we get a motion, please?
I make a motion that we approve case number 21-155, architectural review, LUCR, with, that's it. There's no condition. So, yeah, we approve it.
I second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye?
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations and thank you, absolutely.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is item number 21-141, a major variance to allow for an encroachment of 9 feet into the acquired residential property.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman Al Gower. This is item number 3. The applicant, Chuck Colton, has submitted case number 21-141, which is a major variance to allow an encroachment of 9 feet into the required single residential 10-foot interior side yard setback, which would permit an existing unpermitted 12-foot Alumawood RV cover located on the property, just 1 foot from the eastern property line. Some background on this project is that it originated as a code case due to unpermitted construction. So the applicant came into City Hall and spoke with the planning department a few times about the permitting process for the structure. Staff noted concerns with the structure, but tried to work with the applicant to find a solution. We discussed relocation options and potential other solutions, but the applicant opted to keep the structure in its place, and the project presented before you is in its existing location without any modifications. The location of the site is on a typical rectangular shaped lot at 35843 Rebecca Road in tract number 15195, which might sound familiar because just a few months back you approved architectural review for the Farmstead 9, which are the remaining homes to be developed and constructed in this lot. The property exceeds the minimum lot dimensions of 60 feet wide by 100 feet in depth and has 90 feet of frontage and 120 feet in length. The lot size also exceeds the minimum lot size, which is 10,000 square foot minimum, and in its current condition is 10,019 square feet. There's an existing 3,960 square foot single family residence on the site, as well as the unpermitted RV cover, which is 608 square feet. It's within the RS10M single residential land use district, and again requiring a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size, and is surrounded by other single family residential properties on all sides. You can see the kind of existing location on the screen above you, as well as the remaining lots to be developed through the Farmstead 9 project. There's no existing structures on either side of the property. The site plan is before you on the screen. And so background on the minimum setback requirements is the RS10M land use district requires a minimum side yard setback of 10 feet on one interior side yard, which would allow the other to be permitted at a minimum of 5 feet. The site provides a 9-foot setback on the western side yard, which you can see on the screen, which automatically makes this the lesser setback. So the eastern side would be required to be the 10-foot setback. In its current condition with the RV cover on site, there's only a 1-foot separation from this property line and the block wall on the other property on the eastern side. Without the RV cover, the setback would be 16 feet, and therefore the site would be in compliance with the development code. The RV cover extends approximately 3 feet above a white vinyl fence, which is located above a retaining wall on the eastern property line. The next slide will have a kind of 3D view of that, or cross-sectional, sorry. So in terms of processing, pursuant to Development Code Section 83.030905, up to 40% of side yard setback requirements, which in this case would be a 4-foot encroachment because the requirement would be 10 feet on that eastern side, could be approved through a minor variance request. However, anything beyond that triggers a major variance and is subject to review and approval by the Planning Commission. In order to approve a major variance request, 4 mandatory findings of significance must be met for approval, and those will be discussed on the following slides. This is that cross-sectional view of the RV cover. And you can see that it extends beyond the retaining wall, and there's a 6-foot vinyl fence on top of that, and then the structure is 12 foot high. So this is finding number 1 for approval. The granting of this variance will not be materially detrimental to other properties or land uses in the area and will not substantially interfere with the present or future abilities to use solar systems. So staff was not able to meet this finding for a few reasons. One being that the 1-foot separation from the post of the RV cover could potentially give an illusion that the cover is an extension of the fence on that side property line, kind of seen through this visual right here. This visual screening costs the next door neighbor, could therefore potentially lead to kind of a 9-foot barrier between their property and then the future property owner on the eastern side, and would take away from a human scale on that future property owner's side. Additionally, it is unclear if the slope of the cover will adequately allow water runoff to remain on the subject site, or if it could potentially spill over onto the neighbor's side of the retaining wall. Finding number 2 is that there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property and its permitted use that do not apply to other properties in the vicinity, and in particular the same subdivision. This finding was not met given the property is 90 feet wide by 120 feet long, and thus exceeding the minimum lot dimensions of 60 by 100, which we referenced before. It is additionally a rectangular and common lot shape, And the open storage of an RV is permissible in this land use district so long as it is outside of the front yard setback, which is 25 feet in the RS10M land use district. On this property, there's adequate space for openly parking the vehicle on the side yard area. There are no unique geographical and/or physical constraints that would limit the building envelope of the existing residence on the site. Finding number 3 is that the strict application of the land use district deprives this property of privileges enjoyed by other properties in the same vicinity or land use district. This finding was not met, given that single residential property owners that just barely meet the minimum side yard setbacks that we spoke about, 5 feet on one side and 10 feet on the other, may not have the opportunity to openly store an RV if they don't have adequate space in that side yard area, as our municipal code doesn't permit the open storage of vehicles within that front yard setback area, which often includes driveways. A neighbor at 35883 Rebecca Road is storing an RV in their side yard area without an RV cover for their vehicle, and no other properties have a permitted structure that is 1 foot from the property line within the area. Finding number 4 is that the granting of this variance is compatible with the objectives, policies, general land uses, and programs specified in the general plan and any other applicable plan. This finding was not met because the property is developed consistent with RS10M development standards and exceeds those requirements. It meets the minimum lot size of 10,000 square feet and is a common rectangular shaped lot. Ultimately, this project approval would establish precedence throughout the city because there are no unique site constraints on this property. Here's a site photo, the driveway area. Additionally, a vantage point of the existing cover, right abutting that retaining wall. In terms of processing and environmental review, notices of the project were sent. No comments were received, but again, it should be noted that there are 9 homes in Tract 15195 that have not been constructed or sold to private property owners yet. Specifically, the eastern neighbor pertaining to that finding, which requires no impact to surrounding property owners. And so those are still owned by a developer and going through the building plan check process and grading permit process at this time. Pursuant to section 15270, the project would be statutorily exempt from CEQA because projects which are rejected or disapproved by a public agency are exempt. So it is staff's recommendation that the Planning Commission deny the request for the major variance based on the findings of fact as contained in the agenda report on page 6, and which we also just walked through individually here before you on the screen, and additionally find that the project is statutorily exempt. The applicant is here if you have any questions, and it can help clarify if you have any specific concerns.
Yeah. Okay, with that, I'll disclose I have met with that owner. And I went down there, took a look at the property, met with him. I was trying to get a good feel for what we got going here. So I want to make that clear for the records that I've been out there and I have met with the guy. So with that, anybody have any questions for staff at this time?
I do.
Go ahead.
I always have a question.
Of course you do.
Okay, so you guys, in your presentation, you said that the property as it currently is constructed, how do I want to put it? Basically, you gave me the impression that he can put this somewhere else. Is that correct?
At the counter, yes, we discussed potentially relocating the structure farther back into the property or slightly in, which would potentially require other procedural action through the planning department, potentially a minor variance, working through different options that were potentially available outside of the major variance, which requires this procedural process.
So essentially, outside of us, no matter what, we're gonna have to do a variance to approve him parking his RV on the side with the cover. So there is no other location for him to put this structure. He can't put it on the other side of the house. He can't put it on the front of the house. He can't put it in the back of his house, parallel to the back wall. So the only place for him to put this is where it is right now, whether that's 4 feet more into the house or located where it is now. But either way, we need a variance.
So we had explored at the counter a few different alternatives. Certainly, as part of any person looking to do something on property, we try to find a solution to a problem for that. And so trying to find a way, either modifying the structure and really trying to get it closer to that 10-foot, if it's a minor variance kind of process, that's a bit more palatable, but when it ends up becoming, essentially a structure to 1 foot beyond at property line, we don't have precedence of other structures that meet that requirement.
And how wide is the structure itself?
16 feet.
And how wide is the opening? From the house to the wall, to the fence, how wide is that? Because that, to me, that looks like it's 16.2 feet.
16.2 feet at the furthest corner where the third car garage is, then it ends up becoming over 20 feet further back.
But what you guys are recommending is that he backs his, do you guys have a motorhome? Anybody drive a motorhome?
I've driven a motorhome.
Okay. So that he backs up the motorhome and then angles the motorhome in towards the house. That would be the solution, instead of backing the motorhome straight up, correct? Because that's the only way you can move that structure closer to the house.
If
So-
you were to have a covered structure, yes.
If you were to do the minor variance instead of the major variance.
But then again, the overhang may make it pretty tight if you move it over too much. You're cutting it in there. And then again, if we don't cover it with a cover to protect this expensive motorhome, instead, we could throw a blue cover over the top of it, and I'm sure the neighbors will love to look at that. So, I mean, to me, I'd rather look at a decent-looking cover than I would a blue tarp that ends up getting beaten in the wind.
Well, there are 10 tarps too.
Yeah, there
But
you go.
a different question. I have a couple of questions. I was excited about this because this is the first time in the 2.5 years I've been here, I get a recommendation to deny. And then the second reason I was excited is because there's actual findings, some law we can discuss, which is objective findings. And it appears that you guys have already found that all these 4 findings don't meet the requirements. So a couple of them are hypothetical future neighbors that could be, he may even buy one of the houses next door. We don't know if they're gonna complain or not. The impact, Maddie, you were talking about the solar. Can you clarify on that? You said the fact that it's so high, it's gonna impact the neighbor's ability to do what with solar?
This finding has a couple of different components for it. In the staff report, it specifically discusses that the component having to do with solar isn't something that would necessarily be impacted. However, the discussion of detrimental to other properties or land uses in the area is kind of where those sub-thoughts came from, in that specifically the runoff might not be retained on site is one kind of discussion item there, and then the visual impairment of that larger scale structure right on the property line potentially being something that would not be supported by a future neighbor or
And
resident.
so I wanted, if we may, like I said, we've never done this before, so this is my opportunity to show off my law school and legal training. If we may go through these findings one by one and see if you guys would be happy with something. I don't want to advocate on behalf of Mr. Colton, and I want to fire a disclaimer. I just shook his hand when I walked in, never met this guy. He's probably the only guy in Yucaipa I don't know, so this is exciting for me. But if we were to look at just that various finding number 1, the key word there is materially detrimental. So if it is detrimental, somehow everything we build is going to be detrimental to someone or another, but it's not going to be materially detrimental. And if you were talking about water runoff from the top of this cover, would a gutter help resolve that issue?
We can ask.
Well, I mean, we'll mandate that, we won't ask. But would that satisfy you, at least in findings number 1, if the runoff is covered and the human scale and pedestrian-oriented feel to residential? I don't know if that's materially detrimental. I mean, Yucaipa is beautiful. We were just talking about a bunch of open space that they can go and, find solitude in. Would that meet the requirements for findings number 1?
So if I may add, as part of it, so certainly the gutter would be an important component for addressing the water runoff issue. The second component, though, with that is essentially then that major variance for essentially building at 1 foot from property line ends up actually being, almost at half a foot from property line.
All right.
That's additional consideration for that is then the major variance is then further exacerbated.
So that was my actually clarification that I wanted to ask of you guys. We're treating this like it's a building, even though it's just the cover of a RV. We're treating it by law here the same, right?
As part of our development code, it is a structure, and so it does have to follow the building setbacks. As part of the development code, we do have a projections into setbacks for certain structures. However, detached structures such as patio covers or in this case, an RV cover is not permitted to encroach into that side yard setback.
Okay, so we're treating it by law the same as if it was a building or a house he's building 1 foot off the wall.
Yeah, as required by the development code.
So we don't have anything in the code that can categorize the structures. Like an RV cover is not gonna have the impact of a house being built a foot off the wall.
The only way that would be treated differently, so as I mentioned, the projections into code or projections into required setbacks, and so as part of that determination would be a development code amendment that allowed such structures to encroach into that side yard setback.
So, and I don't know this, and I don't know if you know, but do we have any structures within our city that we've encroached within 1 foot of property lines?
I'm not aware of any residential property that has a permitted encroachment of these structures to 1 foot of property line. Certainly, commercial structures are allowed to go to 0 lot line, but that's certainly a different district, not applicable to this as part of findings number 2 and 3.
If I remember correctly, the houses that are right here, off of Crafton, the Wildwood Homes, the most recent community, you guys know what I'm talking about? Right across the street from the golf course.
So you're talking about the Cedar Glen, which is in the Chapman Heights development plan, not in the same district or vicinity.
Right, but the newest homes that were just built, the smaller ones, right? We did approve a patio cover. It was by itself, it wasn't attached to the house. And we did a minor variance, if I remember, for that patio structure to be 1 foot from that back wall? And when you drive by there, you see it all the time. I mean, that patio cover is right up against that wall. So it's not like we haven't done this before,
Okay,
to
so,
my understanding.
so that was one question. The other thing that's in my mind is, if we were to approve this with very strict guidelines and gutter and signs and whatever we have to put to make sure that it's safe first, and then if we were to approve it, what's the worst that can happen out of this? Other than people in the future coming and saying, I want an RV cover that's 1 foot off this property line.
So as part of it, again, it kind of comes down to, as the discussion for finding number 4, is this property is a property that for all intents and purposes meets the development code requirements for the site. There's no unique physical considerations such as, a stream or something like that that would impact the building envelope. And so by virtue of that, by approving a major variance that allows a structure that close into the property line for a property that for all intents and purposes is consistent with the code, would therefore set a precedent that other structures could be built at that location.
And that was gonna bring me, I'm gonna jump to finding number 4. So wouldn't what Mr. Wolf just discussed about the uniqueness of this property, because if it's not here, he basically cannot have it anywhere else on the property. Wouldn't that be enough to make it unique for his purposes of his use?
Not as a development right that is precluded on this property. It's a single-family residence with a single-family house. So in terms of findings number 2 and 3, it does, for all intents and purposes, provide that the covered RV storage isn't a land use right that is necessarily provided in the development code, as Maddie's presentation identified. This property does have the additional benefit by having a larger side yard to provide side parking for an RV, but that's not necessarily a privilege that's given to every RS property.
But it's well within our purview of approving, right?
To allow,
To allow the structure to remain and grant the variance, major variance?
if you can meet all four findings, then that would be the
Okay,
case. Yeah.
so, well, and that's why, so can we agree on finding number one, if we were to put a gutter and the runoff would be protected there from the water? I don't know how the slope is. Do we know how the slope is on this RV cover?
It is unclear on the plans if there is a slope, which direction that goes.
Okay, all right, so if that was to be covered, would the staff agree that finding number one is found?
That would be correct.
All right. And then for finding number four, I know I'm gonna jump back and forth here, but finding number four, due to the uniqueness and the location of the house on the lot and the way that it's positioned, and him not having the ability to utilize this in any other way other than the way that it's there already, wouldn't that allow this to be something that's within the unique use specified, that's, I'm sorry, that's what I meant. So the strict application of the land use district deprives this property of privileges enjoyed by other properties, enjoyed by others in the vicinity or in the same land use district. So would that be satisfied by what Mr. Wolf was talking about?
Again, it comes down to as part of the RV structure, so it's within the vicinity or same land use districts. Comparing a project within the planned development of Chapman Heights, which has different development standards, different requirements as part of that project, wouldn't necessarily apply or meet the nexus of this one since it's not in the same land use district or vicinity of the project. So in terms of the scope of review, it's looking at projects that are within this. And so as an example, Maddie had referenced an adjoining property that does have open RV storage, but no cover, and so.
So how far does the land use district expand beyond this property?
It's a pretty wide expanse. The RS district covers, certainly we have three different versions with 7,200, 10,000, and 20,000 square feet. This one is the RS 10M, and so that kind of general area near County Line Road is the RS 10M.
On the
So-
screen right now is the neighboring property, an aerial view of their RV parked in the RV parking area without a cover.
This is the neighboring property?
Yes.
Okay. All right, but going back to what you just said, Ben, so the land use district expands into different size lots as well?
Yeah, so this is the mid-tier kind of lot size of 10,000 square feet.
So we can consider the smaller, this size, and the larger size lots when we're discussing this property for purposes of finding number three.
So in this case, because of the land use district being RS 10M, is the finding would be specific to the RS 10M land use district.
And then the RS 10M, that's outside of this neighborhood, not only in this neighborhood?
That is correct.
Okay. So there's no way that we can find that he's being deprived of using his property and enjoying the privileges like other RS-10Ms in the district?
And just kind of for reference, staff did do kind of an aerial reconnaissance, so to speak, of other properties to see if there was any other structures that were this far of an encroachment into that setback and was not able to find that.
No other property? Well, I was gonna go over number two as well, and just saying that there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to this property because of its layout. Again, to the point of Mr. Wolf, that the permitting of the use just because of the layout, because he can park his RV. The issue is not the RV, it's the structure.
That is correct. There isn't a mechanism in our code that allows that projection to go into that side yard setback, so this is the the avenue, the alternative avenue for Plan Commission to consider as well is if they're unable to meet the findings, part of this is all crushed upon the projections into side yard setbacks. And so if the findings aren't able to be met, but certainly there's a way to encourage this structure to remain, another avenue is to amend the development code to allow such projections into that side yard for these types of structures.
So there is no provision for a homeowner to protect their motor vehicle if the setbacks aren't met for a cover, and yet setbacks change. Right now, we have ADUs that only have 4-foot size setbacks. So as we know, setbacks change on a day-to-day basis. So if somebody in that neighborhood wanted to build an ADU, he only has to have 4-foot setback. So,
Yeah, and that's a land use setback that's dictated by state law, but it is
Right.
a
change
limit
in
of
the
4 feet, so it
setbacks.
isn't necessarily the same as this proposed.
Well, but that's a structure, living space structure versus just a cover. That's the trouble I'm having with this, is because it's not a house, it's not a garage, it's just a cover. And whether or not, if it's permanent or movable, I mean, he can take this down in like an hour probably, versus a house that would be sitting there. If he needs to, if there's an emergency, God forbid we have that 9.0 earthquake and we gotta break through that wall, this is something that's gonna probably be standing still.
And my understanding too, Chris, this is a 10-foot setback, right?
That is correct.
And on the house, and again, I'm just making a reference, on the houses that we approved, that patio cover I'm talking about, that was a 5-foot setback. Yes, it was different, right? Because the land use is different, but it was a 5-foot setback. We allowed it to go within a foot. This is a 10-foot setback. There's no difference between if it's 10 feet or 5 feet. We're still allowing the encroachment into that invariance up to a foot. And we did that on the other project.
Well,
which
let me
was just
ask,
a
let me
patio
ask
cover.
this, and I'd like to give an opportunity, obviously, to the applicant to come up and speak, but I wanted to see if we can go through these variance findings and find a way to allow a homeowner to enjoy his RV and covering his RV, because I have an RV, I haven't asked for permission to cover it yet, which I will one day, but I'd like to have that ability without encroaching or harming my neighbors, and I don't think any neighbor will be harmed by this cover. And that's the struggle I'm having, denying someone to protect his property.
Well, the other thing is, and I agree with you, Chris, but to me, when I read these variance findings, to me, right, not the non-legal guy, these findings are justifying why we should allow the structure. These findings, the granting of this variance will not be materially detrimental to the properties and land use in the area and will not substantially interfere with the present or future ability to use solar energy. There are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to this property and its permitted use that do not apply to other properties in the vicinity and in particularly the same subdivision. Again, that's justifying why we should allow this project. Number 3, the strict application of the land use district deprives this property of privileges enjoyed by other properties enjoyed by others in the vicinity. And number 4, the granting of the variance is compatible with the objectives, policies, general land uses, and programs specified in the general plan and applicable plan.
If I may quickly add, just as that, those are the findings as listed in the development code verbatim of what needs to be met. It is not necessarily us making an endorsement of any particular finding. It is specifically saying, as part of this discussion, you have to meet this requirement. And then the analysis identifies that it does not meet that requirement based on what we had provided for that. It is not necessarily endorsement. So reading that at face value, just in that text alone, that is just the verbatim copy of what the development code variance findings identify.
Yeah, no, and I understood it to be that way, so this is the written law. This is a black letter law that we have to argue, if I were to.
That is correct, yeah.
So, and staff is arguing against all findings, like I would have liked to see that, hey, it meets 1 or 2, but you guys have it not meeting any of them, which I respect. You guys do this every day, all day, and you're here to protect the city and its beauty. But that's not to say that someone could not argue the other side, which I think is a good time to maybe have the applicant come up and give us the other side.
Well, there should be some flexibility here, so maybe we see if the applicant like to make a presentation at this point? Maybe he can help clear.
He probably just gave up by now and said, no, I don't want this cover anymore.
I've gone this far. My name is Chuck Colton, and I'm the owner of the residence, and a couple of you have been there. Ben, you've actually been to the house. You didn't go to the house? I thought you did. Somebody else came to the house. Anyway, the first point I want to make is, I know on my plans, because I was under pressure, not under pressure, but I was under the gun to get this so we can get it in this meeting, was I had to go out and measure the distance from my house to the wall. It's 9 feet to the fence, the vertical, okay? There's a pin on the curb, and if you stand at the pin on the curb and you look to the back, there's no pin on the back for the surveillance. Wayne Simmons has been there looking for it. His foreman, Gus, has been there looking for it. Nobody knows where it's at. I got an email text from him that says, I asked him clearly, I says, what's the setback on the west side? He said, 10 feet. My fence is at 9 feet. I don't know what it is. I'm not a surveyor. So I might have 10. The builder says you have 10 feet. Okay, so unless I went out there and found the pin in the back, I don't have 10 feet. But that's beside the point. I have 9 feet on this. And now we're talking about the RV where I'm parking my thing. Somebody was there and said, hey, yeah, I got a motor home. I can put this, 5 feet. First it was 5 feet. My pool equipment's 5 feet. If they approve my pool equipment at 5 feet, I'm sorry. If they approve my pool equipment at 5 feet setback, why can't they approve this at least at 5 feet? But now just the other couple weeks ago, we go, oh, you don't have 10 feet over here, so now we got to go 10 feet all the way. It's like I feel like they're trying to make me not have it because there's impossible to back a motorhome in there with a pole beyond the center of the driveway. It's impossible, okay? Maybe I could squeeze it in at 4 feet, but in my mind, common sense is the difference of 3 or 4 feet to there, okay? So that's the first point. Second point is I already have drains. It already has a slope. I have drains in the sidewalk. I have rain gutters on the awning, okay? I don't want water going over into the neighbors. I don't want water just going everywhere. I know better. It's have a slope to the front to go down the driveway. I have drains in the driveway underneath the motorhome, and I have 2 rain gutters on either end of this awning. It sticks up 30 inches above the fence. Somebody, I think Madeline said it was something about a human scale. I guess it's like, oh, when you walk by, you can't see. So it's 30 inches above the fence. The fence is 6 feet, so 2.5 feet more is 8.5 feet for the neighbor that they're building the house now, 16 or 18 feet above mine. And my wall's 4.5 feet. My human scale is a 10-foot wall and fence that I look at that I can't see through. We're talking about 2.5 feet above their fence that they can look through. It's not solid. I have a solid wall on my side, 10 feet before I can see anything. I don't mind. So it seems contradictory that, oh, this is gonna be an eyesore for the neighbor over here, but yet I have the eyesore from his 6-foot fence above my 5-foot wall. So, and then I guess you can say, well, that's 2 different things, and it's a vinyl fence for him and a block wall for you. It's 2 different structures on 2 different properties. Well, his vinyl fence and my metal thing, my metal lightweight Luma wood patio covers are 2 different structures, right? And sticks up 2 feet above his fence. I don't know what the code is for a height restriction. So I just feel like they're doing everything they can and now the last minute to get me not to use it. I live in the cul-de-sac. The neighbor up the street, he would like an awning, he told me. Okay, someday, maybe, possibly, he doesn't want to go to the expense. But when he built his house, his little garage is 10 feet wide and he has a skinny driveway, but he's straight shot. I live in the cul-de-sac. I gotta angle my motorhome into the driveway. That's a special circumstance. I already put a hole in the side of it because I caught the eave. I really only have 14 feet, okay? And then they said, oh, you can get it and back it up and back it up and back it up and back it up, but then the poles are gonna be 10 feet off the wall. It would be impossible. I have to tear it down. So as far as the materials, it's aesthetically nice looking. It has rain gutter and rain runoff for it already. The human scale seems contradictory to me. I'm looking at a 10-foot wall and they're looking at a 2-foot above theirs. If they're even looking at it, it's only a 5-foot setback. In fact, I could have built my home with a motorhome garage to a 4-foot setback. Is that right? 16 feet off the ground. Would that be correct? Without any without any variance. Could I have built my home to 4 feet off that wall with a 16-foot motorhome garage? Like the neighbor on the other side, 2-story home, 26 feet tall or whatever it is. They're building a 2-story home right now next to me. So my point is, it just seems tit for tat. I'm just trying to park my motorhome under a cover. It can be taken. What if I put some casters on it and can roll it around? I mean, and I heard somebody say that there's nothing within the district. I can show you a dozen of the same type of things, not as beautiful as mine, that is on the property line. You just go to 3rd and 5th. There's a guy made a poles on the property line with a canvas carport. Been there for years. There's another guy, 4th and H. He just put up recently a 30-foot long, 15-foot tall easy up for his RV. But they say nobody's complained. I don't know who's complained. Maybe they're here gonna argue it. But none of my neighbors are complaining about it. And so I'm asking for an approval that this is something that should be approved. I have a special circumstances. I've jumped through hoops. I've paid $2,000 to be here tonight on top of what the awning itself. And so I think the next guy, special circumstance, is gonna have to come and go through the same thing I've gone through. He just doesn't get to have it. And that narrows down the, what do you call it, the special circumstance that you give to one and not another neighbor. I live on a cul-de-sac. I have to curve into my back. The pole, I put it back as far as I can so I don't hit those legs. I've got it over to the wall, and I don't know what else more to ask for. I think I might have 10 feet on the other side. I just had to write all these plans and put it as 9 feet because it said at 10 originally because that's what I got off from the builder, but I measured it. Madeline asked me to measure it if I can prove to it, and I can only prove 9 feet. The builder says I have 10 feet. I don't care about that foot. I just care about the cover for my motorhome, and that's why I'm asking for approval.
Okay, anyone have any questions for the applicant? Other than Castor?
Well,
I was, oh, you gonna talk, Chris?
Go ahead, Lloyd.
I was curious, did you have somebody put it up for you?
Yes, I have a friend of mine who does aluminum wood patio.
Does he not make it a habit to check into the code?
I don't know. He came from Temple City. We helped him put it up, and we put it up.
how long have you had it for?
Pardon me?
How long have you had it for?
I got the letter from the city a week after I put it in, and they're building a home across the street, and somebody saw it, and I got a letter. I think it was in April. We've been going around.
And how long have you lived there for?
I moved in November. I've been here 1 year.
Okay.
I find it really unusual that somebody who makes a business of
Well, it's
building,
not his business. He knows how to do them.
but that's a risk you run. When you have a friend who's a handyman,
Yeah,
then you run the risk of not clearing through,
I understand.
and
I
and
thought,
I see
personally
it.
thought it was a freestanding thing, and I've seen them all over town. And I put it up, and I wanted to do it nice because I take pride in my home.
And I mean, I see, I don't see it as complicated as what you guys are talking about. I just, I tend to be somebody who says, this is what the rule says, and we're within 1 foot, supposed to be within 10 feet, it doesn't work. And the only exclusion that I understand is, it's not about not parking your RV there, it's about parking it under a cover there.
Yeah, I can have a
So
14-foot
nobody
motorhome.
is excluding your right to park your RV, but they're just saying that the code says any kind of structure and especially since there's been an encroachment on the other side of the house, that eliminates the flexibility that you would have on at the east side, I think, is where you're.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I have 10 over there or 9.
Well, I mean, I would think if that was a question, I would come to tonight's meeting absolutely loaded with and I know you said you talked to
Wayne Simmons, right?
Simmons, and yeah, but, so I don't see it as a real complicated issue, other than the fact that a structure was put up that doesn't conform to the code. And, you know, lots of things that are done that are not supposed to be within the code, then, and I get it, that I mean, I drove over there, I stopped and looked at it, you're at the end of a cul-de-sac, I understand it's maybe more complicated for you than it is for your friend up the street. That's probably why he bought up the street, because it's easier for him to get in and out, you know? I mean, there's lots of issues that go into it. I just think it's pretty cut and dried myself.
Anybody else have any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comments, Ben?
None on this item.
So we have no comments and we had no letters or anything, rebuttals or anything on this?
As noted, a lot of the surrounding properties are currently vacant, so there
yeah,
isn't
it's empty.
necessarily a
The
resident.
whole street is empty, isn't it?
Yeah, basically. Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing and move to the commissioners.
When was this house built?
He would have been the first owner, so it was built about a year ago.
Okay.
I have some questions, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
of staff. As I understood at the beginning, this was a code enforcement origination?
That is correct.
And was it staff originated, or was this complaint originated?
I believe it was a complaint that originated the code enforcement citation.
So somebody saw it and said, something's amiss here.
That is correct. That is my understanding of the case.
Okay. But since the origin of the code enforcement action, you haven't received any other public comments?
That is correct.
Okay. I have some questions about the findings, or actually, my understanding is that the findings, the city has less latitude with variance findings than they have on other issues. Namely, the government code dictates that for a variance to be granted, it has to meet those 4 requirements. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the variance findings themselves arrive kind of from the state requirements, and many other states have similar requirements, and then other entitlements have a little bit more latitude on how the city administers those.
Okay, so we're, the city council is somewhat, has its hands tied because the government code is saying for you to allow variances in your jurisdiction, it has to meet these requirements.
That is correct.
And are these variance findings 1 through 4 from the state code? Do you know?
I don't know if the language is exactly the same, but it's the same applicable concept that's found in many jurisdictions.
Okay. I think the fact that this is a unique staff recommendation for denial, and I've been on the commission for 7 years, and I cannot recall in that period that there has been another denial. I don't know if you have a different recollection.
I don't recall if staff had done a recommendation for denial. In my professional career, have only had a very small number that I've had that occasion where it's been there. Normally what we do try to do as staff level is try to work with applicants to find a project or find a solution where we can recommend approval. And so usually we try to have that back and forth and get the project so that we're all comfortable to move forward.
Which seems to be a practice that we're used to from staff because we see recommendations for approval time after time after time. In other words, there's been a lot of work with the applicant to iron out things, to work out this, to identify issues that might be of concern to either the planning commission or the city council and resolve those at the beginning.
That is right. We usually try to make sure that once we're going before a public hearing, that it will be kind of a successful approach.
All right. Last question. Is a decision by the planning commission on the variance appealable at the city council?
That is correct.
Is there a charge to the applicant for the appeal?
There is, it's a additional deposit because this is a actual cost application that would be required. And then certainly if a private individual wanted to appeal it, there's a fee that they would have instead as well. So, yes.
All right, thank you.
Well,
Wait, one more. On the findings. The requirement is that the approving authority, in our case, the planning commission, has to make an affirmative finding on every one of those. One negative is enough to ding the granting of the variance.
That is correct. And kind of as a pragmatic approach for variances, finding number 1 and 4 are kind of the more simplistic ones. It's 2 and 3, which really kind of justify a unique physical consideration on the property that deprives them of a land use right that others have. So a common example that I always kind of reference is, a stream on the property, so you can't build into the stream, so you have to move your building a little bit further over to allow the, construction of a single-family residence, as an example, where there's a unique physical constraint on the property that would otherwise, if strict adherence to the rule, would preclude that land use right.
All right, thank you.
so before I go back to the findings and discuss those with you guys, now after hearing the applicant's position, what were the alternatives proposed to this applicant by the staff?
So we were trying to get it pushed further back and then closer to the house. There's other components, in terms of the structure, the way the building structure setback line is defined is essentially the wall face of it. And so, trying to have that. So essentially where that most eastern post is what dictates that individual line that we're using, provided that the eaves don't project more than 2 feet. And so we were trying to see if there's ways to maneuver it there, certainly into perhaps a minor variance where it's a little bit easier to work and where it isn't as significant of a reduction from that.
And what about the statement made about the 2-story house going next door to him on the other side of that wall? Is that something you're aware of?
So a residence is allowed to build in the RS district, as mentioned before, a 10 and or 5 foot setback, one side being at least 10 feet. And so certainly a residence could build at 5 feet from property line.
A 2-story?
That is correct.
All right, so I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but as you said, I think 1 and 4 are the easily met ones, and just me personally, seeing no material that
Which number, Chris?
on number 1, the granting of this variance will not be materially detrimental to other properties or land uses in the area. That's one part of finding number 1. So there's no finding of material detrimental anyway, and you guys agreed with that, correct? Having this variance approved, a major variance, will not be materially detrimental to other properties.
If the statement about the gutters on the property where it isn't going to run over on the property would address that concern, the project plans that were provided by the applicant and the photos do not depict that, but certainly if that is indeed a site condition, then yes, finding number 1 would be able to be supported.
All right, perfect, because finding number 1 has a second part of it and will not substantially interfere with the present or future ability to use solar energy. I think that's what you guys were discussing. We have no issue with that.
That's correct.
All right, so we're agreeing at least finding number 1 is met. The exceptional circumstances that he just described, being on a cul-de-sac, having to turn at an angle, and damaging his RV, whether the structure is there or not, that's the only place that he could have it. Would that be an exceptional circumstance enough or a condition that's applicable to this property that would change staff's mind into meeting finding number 2?
If Maddie can pull up the aerial image of the site, the far west corner of the property is what's in the cul-de-sac. However, the driveway location itself is fully within the standard street segment of it. So in terms of the cul-de-sac dimensions, that in of itself isn't necessarily at least based on the site plan and the aerial image, isn't necessarily a site constraint that applies to the driveway location.
But the cul-de-sac starts on this property.
Yes, further west of the driveway, outside of the RV access.
And then, I don't know if we can ask the applicant, is he coming in, making a left into his driveway, or if he goes around the,
I have to go into the cul-de-sac and back up. The driveway there's a planter area and some other area on the east side of the driveway. The driveway doesn't start till about 10 feet into my property.
all right, so that, having heard that, would that make it an exceptional circumstance or condition? This is turning into a courtroom. I love this. This is what I do.
Yeah,
every day.
it's just an opinion. How can he get in there any other way? And by looking at this, yeah, he's gonna have to come into an angle, and I don't know,
So my question is, would that description fit into the exceptional condition, exceptional circumstance or condition? To satisfy finding number 2 per staff's recommendation?
So I would say this certainly is a discussion for the planning commission to weigh in on. In terms of, the cul-de-sac dimension, he's going back up from one direction. If there wasn't a cul-de-sac, let's say it was a, through street, backing into the property would still be something that's a site condition he would still have. So the fact that there's a cul-de-sac that he loops around on doesn't necessarily.
So I guess cul-de-sac or not, there's a special condition. That's his position, I think.
I think it's important to note too, in finding 2 within the staff report, it's discussed that our development code does not require covered RV parking. It's not a land use right that is required on every single property. And kind of circling back to what we discussed about open storage of larger vehicles as well as including RVs is something that's not permitted in the front yard setback but can be in a side yard area if there is adequate space. So on site there is sufficient parking, the existing 3-car garage required pursuant to our development code, but there's nothing encouraging or requiring that covered RV parking.
Well, it's
So
not
that's a component of variance finding too.
And I see where you're coming from, Maddie. So I know it's not required, but it's something that we would permit. It's a privilege that landowners have, that they can have on their property, should the layout of the land be different and the house location on that property be different. We're saying because of the way that this house was built, and I don't know how much this gentleman had to say over where the house should be or should not be, or how it should be laid out, then he is kind of deprived of that privilege of having a cover for his RV that other RSM 10s can have in the same district.
Potentially other RS10Ms might be able to if they had, say, a 20-foot side yard setback on one side, but additionally, like other RS10N properties that are only meeting that minimum dimension, 10 and 5, might not even be able to fit their RV in the side yard area at all and would have to go to an RV parking facility or something of that nature because they're not allowed to park it in their front yard area. So.
And I understand that, but for the ones that can park, and they have the land, like he has from the wall to his house, where he can park the RV, it's just the cover for the RV that's at issue.
That is correct. The setback does not, or the development code does not have a provision that allows for the 1-foot setback for the RV structure.
That's right.
But
So
the
that's
RV itself can be parked there.
Yeah, that's what we're here, because he can park the RV 1 foot from the wall.
That is correct.
So we're here to discuss if we can have the cover for the RV within 1 foot, and if that would be something that would fit into finding number 2 because of the exceptional location of that driveway. And if you say no, it's no. I'm just
Can I
trying
say
to add-
something? So I'm kind of learning about this myself, because I'm on the engineering side, and this is definitely more planning. But I think something that Maddie said, and maybe it's time we can think about that, is that this does meet the standard dimensions of a 10,000 square foot lot. This is a pretty standard sized lot. So when it's saying that there's exceptional circumstances, by stating that that very standard sized lot has an exception, it's kind of setting that precedent that Maddie was talking about. This is a pretty regular, very standard, nothing out of the ordinary lot.
Well, and I think the size is nothing out of the ordinary, but the layout for him to use it for the purpose of what he needs to use it for is what the exception is that I'm advocating for. Does that make sense? Obviously not.
I think if we go back to the neighboring property too, if they were to put the same size structure up, if we measured the dimensions there, it would be under the same restrictions and would require this procedure too, even though they're at the end of the cul-de-sac on the other side. Their RV is pretty much, let's see, where is it? Right here, kind of taking up that capacity right there.
Yeah, and look at how close that RV is to the wall.
Yeah.
So it's just, the issue here is whether it's covered or not to protect his investment, because some RVs are worth more than some of the houses in Yucaipa. We all can agree to that. So I don't know how much he paid for his RV, but that's all this man is trying to do, is cover his investment and his personal property. And I think it could be argued, whether I'm winning this argument here or not for him on his behalf, it could be argued that that's an exceptional circumstance because of the layout of the property and not the size. Does that make sense? Am I too far off?
Can you go back to the picture where you're showing the front with the RV, right? Nope. Yeah, go back again. Nope, the other way. One more. Right there.
And then as just kind of noted, in terms of the Plan Commission perhaps looking for other solutions, this all kind of cruxes upon what the structure setbacks are and whether or not another alternative is the Development Code Amendment that would allow projections up to 1 foot from property line for certain types of detached open structures. And that would be a policy decision certainly for City Council. But in terms of that, then in that case, a variance wouldn't be required because such structures would be allowed to encroach into that setback.
I think I'd be comfortable with that. I'd be comfortable with a open cover structure to be within a certain, we would have more leeway in allowing it based on special circumstances, and I'd consider this a special circumstance, because in my view, I don't know if this is how we're supposed to treat this, but we're supposed to act like we are these citizens that come before this body and have their voices heard and their concerns heard, especially because it's a recommendation for denial, which is why I'm getting out of my way and probably, doing a lot more than we normally do on this. So if I were to be doing this, I would want someone to be considering, hey, if I'm the neighbor or I'm the person requesting this major variance, I wouldn't want a house to be built within a foot of the wall. But as Madeline said, and as you confirmed, 5 foot on the other side of this wall can have a structure of 16 to 20 feet high. 2-story building, 2-story house.
Yeah, as that would
So
be
I
permitted
think
by
that's more of a big variance, and it's allowed per our code, but that's more of an impact than the impact of this little aluminum cover. I just don't see the harm of it aesthetically, engineerily, or human factor-wise. If an earthquake happened, this would not fall on a neighbor and kill someone, kind of thing.
So there's no health or safety or anything like that that comes into play here?
It is all borne by what the development code provisions currently are. And so that's ultimately, in terms of the staff's recommendation is, we're tasked with trying to administer the development code and make sure that people are following those requirements. There are provisions as identified by the government code and the variance stuff to allow flexibility where there are unique physical limitations on the property that would deprive a land use right. And so, in terms of the alternative is ultimately comes down to is administering the development code. If there is a tolerance for structures like these to be in the location it is, then it would be a solution of allowing the development code to have that provision rather than a variance. And
But the city council has to make that decision.
that is correct, following a recommendation from Plan Commission.
So is this structure secured to the concrete?
Yeah. It's bolted to the
Bolted
concrete.
down? And the only reason we're having this is because we're talking about 1 foot instead of 5 foot?
In this case, it'd be
5
10
feet.
feet, but yes, it would be.
So if it was
as
a
part of-
minor variance, we wouldn't be having this
And
discussion.
if you look at the motorhome, between the motorhome and the the house, it's don't have that much room to move over. It's pretty tight. It has to be on a case-to-case basis. In this case, it's,
But would we be sitting here if we were talking about a minor variance and having the same discussion?
A minor variance has the ability to be approved at the staff level, and then anything above that. So in terms of, let's say hypothetically, the minor variance as identified before allows a 40% reduction, not to exceed 3 feet from property line. And so either 3 or 4. And so if it was the 10-foot setback, in that case, he's able to go up to 6 feet under the minor variance. And then even as part of, let's say hypothetically, this was the 5-foot setback, he has more than 10 feet on the other side. This particular case would still require the major variance. We had been trying to work with the property owner to try to find a solution that would be closer to the minor variance of not at the code requirements, but trying to minimize the disparity between what is proposed and what the development code requires.
And that would be moving this over 3 feet? Well, you said 6 feet under, it's 1 foot now. So that means we only need 4 feet between.
It'd be
the
5
post.
feet to get it to 6 feet.
Well, he does, he has the slide
So
out
it-
on that RV. And the picture of the slides out.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about 4 feet, if it went over 4 feet, how much would it encroach into your house? Because that's,
As a recommendation, if the plan commission wants to have the applicant, we do need him at the microphone so that we
come on
can
up, come
record
on.
that correspondence. Thank you.
Yeah, if I moved it 4 feet, I would have from 14 minus 4, I would have 10 feet, and from mirror to mirror, it's 10 foot 6.
okay, and what's your width at the narrowest point?
The eve sticks out 2 feet roughly. The width from the wall to my house is 16 feet, not 16.2. I ran a tape measure, and the eve sticks out roughly 2 feet. So I have 14 feet between the vinyl fence and the eve hanging out, and if I took off 4 feet, originally they were saying 5 feet, and I was trying to see, and it makes it dangerous.
So you'd only have 2 feet left on each side? With the
Well,
mirrors?
the width of the motorhome with the mirrors is 10 feet 6.
Right, and you have 14.
The mirrors are 1 foot each, so you can have 8 foot 6 on it going down the road, plus the,
So you barely have enough room as it is.
as it is, I can get in there safely, without taking out a leg or something. There's only 5 legs, they're 3 inches wide, and they stick up 30 inches above the fence.
Okay.
That's all you see.
All right, thank you. Well, my personal opinion is, I think that, I think the applicant has shown that the variances have been met. That is my opinion. I understand, Lloyd, what you're saying, that, no, this is cut and dry, but and to me, the variances have been met, and I'm gonna approve the project, so. I don't know if you
So
have.
are you prepared for?
Motion, I think.
No,
Yeah,
I mean,
I
but-
am, unless you have something else to say.
I think one of the,
He
you know,
hasn't
and
talked
and
yet.
I'm not, believe it or not, a big component
We know that.
of government overreach.
Yeah.
And so I like, for you as a property owner, which I am also a property owner, I like to have property owners be reasonably considered by the big body, those guys that are sitting up there, you know. On the other hand, I think where we are today as a city compared to where it was, this community was 35 years ago when I moved here, we don't have as many tar paper shacks up on the property lines with crap flying all over the community because it's blowing off. The reason we don't have that is because we have this. And there's gotta be, my opinion is there needs to be a standard that is met. Given, I agree, I remember the variance that we had at Chapman Heights for that.
And I agree
That's
with you.
a totally different thing, totally different. But I just think standards need to be met, and I'm gonna let it rest at that, and somebody else can make a motion of whatever they
Yeah,
wanna make.
and I agree with you that
Richard,
standards.
you got something you can weigh in here?
Well, you guys asked a lot of questions, and there were a few of them were mine. I think my only thing is that obviously it doesn't meet any of the codes for setbacks or anything, you know, but that's, you know, and that's why they're asking for a variance, because it's gonna deviate from the code, so that's why we're here. I mean, and if you've gotta meet those requirements, those 4 requirements, and they're, I mean, a couple of them were kind of hard to meet, but it's not, I don't think it's that bad, that, you know, your hands are kind of tied. So, I mean, it's like, why are we even here? So it's, I mean, that's the reason why we're here. It's a variance, and we need to figure out
So Aaron,
if it's,
add a motion?
Yeah, I will make a motion that we approve case number 21-141, major variance to allow an encroachment of what we're putting 9 feet here, but really the encroachment is 4 feet if we look at the minor variance of what it would actually be. For the required single residential 10-foot interior side yard setback to permit an existing 12-foot tall Luma wood RV cover that is located 1 foot from the interior property line at 35843 Rebecca Road. And I make that recommendation because I believe, after listening to the applicant and through our discussion and your presentation, that variance finding 1, 2, 3, and 4 have been met.
I second that.
As a point of clarification, one, I did want to note, the variance reduction is still based on the 10-foot setback, not from the minor variance, but in order to meet the approval as per your motion for the record, I will need you to go through each individual finding and describe for the record what those findings are for approval.
Okay. So the granting of this variance, so variance finding number 1, and commissioners, if you agree with this, please chime in your opinions. For those of you who are going to vote yes. The granting of this variance will not be material or detrimental to other properties or land use in the area and will not substantially interfere with the present or future ability to use solar systems. The house that's going to go next door to this location is going to be, what we're saying, almost 30 feet higher than this location. A two-story house going next to it, so it's gonna be significantly higher than what this cover is gonna be, so obviously solar is not an issue.
Let's stay with the commissioners. Okay.
Either way, the property line next door sits higher, so there will not be an issue. And as far as detrimental to other properties in their land use, there is a block wall in between these properties and it is not going to interfere with anything that another property does on their side of the property. Anybody want to add to that?
Just materially, it will not be materially detrimental. Right. That's how I agree with that finding.
Variance finding number 2, there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to this property and its permitted use that do not apply to other properties in the vicinity and in particular the same subdivision. So exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to this property. I think the applicant laid it out pretty well as far as the difficulty in trying to back this RV up. He's already hit the eave once into such a narrow space that does allow for him to have an RV, which is permitted. But as far as the safety of backing this vehicle into that property for the vehicle itself and anybody else, I mean, we're talking about a couple feet on each side of the RV. You know, having an older RV, does it have a backup camera? Can you see what's behind you? I think that there are exceptional circumstances and conditions that are applicable to this property to allow this applicant to have this cover where it is located.
I agree.
Anything to add to that?
I just think that, just going back to the staff's discussion, that this is applicable to this property and it's permitted use, not necessarily it's required use. So one of the permitted things that these properties can have is a cover for their vehicles or whatever they want to cover. So this is one of the things that the exceptional circumstance or condition applies to this property. And should anyone else wants in the future to argue that, then we would look at their case
Yes.
with the same, criticism that we're looking at this one.
Yep. Variance finding number 3, the strict application of the land use district deprives this property of privileges enjoyed by other properties enjoyed by others in the vicinity or in the same land use district. So this,
Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
easy one.
so just where the location is at, the layout of the location of the house, the setback on the side. I think that one's pretty obvious. And then variance finding number 4, do you want to add to that?
I just wanted to add that deprives the privilege not only to have the cover, but to protect his personal property, which is something we hold dear in this country, I believe. So that cover is something that he's using to protect his investment of personal property.
And then variance finding number 4, the granting of the variance is compatible with the objectives, policies, general land use, and programs certified or specified in the general plan and any applicable plan. So we grant variances all the time. We've had projects come to us in the few years that I've served on this planning commission numerous times. These are always a case-by-case type of issue. We look at each one of them, and for the land use, that's always the issue, right? Whenever we do a variance, it's land use.
In number 4, I mean, it says variance procedures are available to allow flexibility in standards where unique limitations apply, and I think this definitely applies.
So, and the fact that, I know Commissioner Rexted mentioned that the project we did here in Chapman Heights in it granting the land use variance for an independent structure, just like this one, although that one was in the backyard, but we granted that to be within 1 foot of the rear block wall. I think it essentially it is the same. Yeah, that was 5 feet setback instead of a 10-foot setback. This is a 10-foot setback instead of a 5-foot setback. But either way, we have still, this commission has still granted those types of variances for that land use. So, anybody have anything else on 4?
No?
And that suffice?
We will write it down and put it for the record.
Okay,
I second all that.
so we have a motion and a second. Okay, with that, no other,
Yeah, I have some comments,
Go
if I
ahead.
may. Yeah, and I want it to be clear, at least as far as I'm concerned, this is not about motorhomes. It's not about the aesthetics of the structure you have. I think it's beautiful. I wish I could do that on my own property. And I don't believe that our role here is to be your advocate. That's your job. And staff generally is the advocate for applicants. In 99% of the cases we see, they come and they say, telling you, Planning Commission, we recommend approval of this proposal because it meets the requirements of the code. The code in our city is the policy that's been set by the city council. Our job is not to have our own opinions on what that should be. Our job is to look at what direction they've given us and say, we think that this project meets the policy objectives of the city council. And on occasion, when we disagree with those, there's a mechanism where we can get our wishes in front of the city council and let them know, we think this needs to be looked at and to be changed. And perhaps this is one of those where it needs to be changed. My problem here is we are turning ourselves into pretzels to try and make your project meet not only the city council's objectives, but also the requirements that have been imposed on us by the state. And I'm of the same mind as Commissioner Rexstad. I am a personal property rights person. I think we should be able to use our property, but this concept of land use has developed so that it's orderly and everything else. I noted with interest the first project down in the Dunlap area, and he was very, very polite in describing the development pattern of Dunlap. Just go drive through there. Hovel, mansion, piece of junk, without being disparaging, because I live down in that area. But that's the reality of what happens when you have planning that goes forward without much direction or guidance. So this is not about the right to have a motorhome, the right to park it or do anything else, but it's about the right to construct structures as they're defined in our code within the parameters that have been established by the city council. And unfortunately, I wish I could say otherwise. I don't think this meets those requirements. And I thought Commissioner Rexstad really articulated it well. Also, there is an alternative here, and that is, and it's why I asked the question to make sure the decision of this commission is appealable. Now, there's an expense to that, unfortunately, but that's the reality of it. And these are the kinds of decisions that I think the city council is best. We're looking at it saying, we think this, but they're the ones who establish it and are charged with the final interpretation that this is what we meant, or this is a case that we think is unjust. We need to do something, staff. Come back with some code amendment that will allow us to facilitate these kinds of structures. I don't think we're there yet, and maybe this is the test case to get us there, but I think we're doing an injustice by twisting this around. As much as we would all love to help the property owners here, our initial duty is the city council and the directions and policy that they've given it. So with that, I'm going to be voting against the approval or in favor of the denial.
And if I can add then to this, first, thank you, and I respect that. I believe that it is, the purpose behind a variance is not for us to say we don't agree with city council, but it's for us to say that certain conditions apply. And variances are there for us to grant based off of those conditions. Second, we, just like city council or the commission, just like they come to us with recommendations for approval, numerous times since I've been on this planning commission, we have denied projects, or we have had certain commissioners vote no on projects. So although the planning commission may come to us, or this body may come to us with the recommendation that this meets everything, this meets the code, this meets all that other type of stuff, we have said no to those projects. So just as they're saying we should not recommend, or they do not recommend this project, that doesn't mean that we should be saying no to every single project. Just like in turn, like I said, we have said no to projects they have recommended. I have said no, and I have voted yes. Look at the Vaughn's gas station project. I mean, that was a 4-3 vote. So I believe that the variance is there for us to make those decisions as a commission. And I just wanted to put that on the record, but I do understand your perspective as well.
Did you have a comment, Lloyd, you wanted to make or no? No, okay. Chris?
I've already talked.
Well, this is very exciting for me. This is America at its best. All right. So as a foreigner, a refugee, loving this civil discourse. And Mr. Colton, I want to just show you the other side of the coin here is the responsibilities that whatever decisions we make comes with it as a good citizen and a great member of this community, because I love this community and I think we all do. And the wonderful job this staff does day in and day out to help facilitate landowners to come to this body and the next, or sometimes not even need to come to this body. I would like to make sure that your structure is sound and it meets all the structural criteria, because this fight here is like was discussed on both ends. It's not about you. It's about what we would like this city to do, what we would like the landowners to do, so we can all live in harmony and not build a structure or park our vehicles on each other's property. The example that was given around Dunlap is an eyesore compared to the rest of the beautiful town, that this body right here, the staff, is the ones that do the heavy lifting, and we just come and review what their proposals are. So I just want to make sure that I bring that to your attention, and I hope you walk out with appreciation for their hard work and dedication for what they do to keep the city beautiful and going.
Okay, with that, I don't see any other discussion, so I'll call for the vote. So all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed?
No.
Nay.
So we have 4-2.
So just for clarity, Ben, did we make sure that this structure is sound and it meets all the structural requirements that is standard?
That would be required. So we did provide, as part of the agenda packet, conditions of approval, which would dictate kind of that. So it would be verifying, providing, the structural calculations, or if it's a standard kind of design, those details, and it would require permit through building and safety.
All right, and I have no doubt Mr. Colton will comply with all of that to make sure his structure remains there sound. So,
Maybe it's the builder's fault, I don't know.
all right.
Okay, I had to take that shot. Okay, let's just move on to our next item. And that would be the case number 21-153, the planning use permit, architectural review. We've already done this once, but somebody didn't follow through, so we're back.
And Christian will be presenting this project for Yucaipa Auto Collision.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Just as you said, we have done this project before. Should look pretty familiar to some members of the staff.
Is this the paint? The paint one?
Yeah, we approved it once.
All right, so the applicant brings before you today case number 21-153, a planning use permit and architectural review for an 8-bay automotive repair facility on 0.44 acres within 2 metal buildings totaling 5,120 square feet located at 12442 California Street. And the applicant is Yucaipa Auto Collision. Some prior history. At the regular meeting of February 2nd, 2017, the Planning Commission approved case 16-019, CUP. This CUP expired before the required conditions of approval were met, with no extension timely filed. So to move forward with the building permit, the applicant is now reestablishing with the planning use permit. The project is located on a .44 acre parcel on 12442 California Street, north of Avenue E. The land use district is the CG, or General Commercial Land Use District, and the surrounding land uses are to the north, General Commercial, to the east, Institutional, to the south, Commercial, which is the post office, and to the west is multifamily residential. The site plan features two 2,560 square foot buildings, 5,120 square feet total. It is 65 feet from the rear property line, 47 feet from California Street, 29 feet from the north property line, and it features 8 outdoor parking spaces with 8 garage bay spaces. There is a 6-foot block wall, or there's going to be a 6-foot block wall on property line with a 10-foot drainage easement at the rear of the property. The floor plan features an 8-bay garage with a 448 square foot office. There's an additional workshop area within these bays. And this location and site design meets all of the CG development code requirements. Some of the operational details, it is falls under the Class 3 general repair services of the CG district, with hours of operation Monday through Friday between 8 and 6, Saturday from 8 to 1, and Sunday will be closed. The activities are to support existing automotive repair and body repair on California Street. There's another location a few parcels down, and the repair activities will occur within the buildings. The elevations are provided here. It is going to provide a metal exterior with mansard roof and stone base, and decorative facade enhancements along California Street, including a stucco interior with a stone tower, landscaping planter, and a metal awning. As a part of the landscaping plan, there will be street-oriented landscaping to complement the front facade, as well as rear yard landscaping to provide an additional buffer to the residential uses to the west, and to support drainage best practice management. These are some of the existing site conditions in these photos. So, project review notices were sent to all contiguous neighbors and no responses were received. However, it should be noted in the initial review of this entitlement, there were a couple concerns about noise and pollution. These were addressed through the site design, through the conditions of approval, and through pertinent health and safety requirements. So it is staff recommendation that you approve the planning use permit, architectural design and conceptual landscaping, and to adopt the findings, adopt a categorical exemption pursuant to section 15303 of CEQA, and to direct staff to file a notice of exemption. If you guys have any questions, both myself and the applicant could help.
So there has been no changes whatsoever on this project?
It's essentially the same.
Okay, same identical project we already approved, so. Commissioners, we wanna, I guess we better go through the program here. Do we have any,
So the applicant is here. I don't know if
is the
they wanted to
applicant,
do,
did he wanna make something?
Okay. And there, I guess as your follow-up question, there are no requests to speak
No
on this item.
request to speak, so we'll close the public hearing, move to the commissioners. Do we have anything, commissioners? We have a motion?
I'll move the item as recommended.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move the item.
I'll second.
We have a second, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 6-0. Project approved.
Now you need to do one across the street from your building, on the east side. My kids go to Inland Leaders, so. No, it's great. I'll tell you, from a parent and a board member at that school, I'm excited for you guys to get your building going. It's gonna make the area look a lot nicer, and if you guys could do something, and, you know, eventually at that corner, that's gonna make it even look that much nicer. All right, I like it.
You can see if you get your builder to get it done this time.
Good luck.
Thank you. Okay, the next item we have is item number 21-156, special use permit for architectural review. And who's taking, Madeline?
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. So this is item number 5, case number 21-156, special use permit and architectural review of a proposed 3,000 square foot and 27.3 foot tall detached garage, which will be located on a single-family residential property at 35678 Avenue G. Some background on the site location. The property is 2.55 acres, and it has RL 2.5 rural living with a 2.5 acre minimum lot size zoning. It's surrounded by other single-family residences, and there is a floodway to the north. The garage will provide a storage area for the applicant's cars and other recreational vehicles and shall not be used for commercial purposes as a standard condition of approval for projects of this type. There are existing unpermitted storage containers on the site that are to be removed prior to the certificate of occupancy issued through the Building and Safety Department, and that has also been noted as a condition of approval for the project and is documented in the agenda packet. The site plan is up on the screen right now and shows that the site is currently improved with a 2,088 square foot home, which also includes an attached 785 square foot garage area, a 213 square foot porch area, and a 662 square foot patio area. The combined home square footage of all of the existing habitable structure and kind of attached accessory structures is 3,748 square feet. The proposed garage is 3,000 square feet and therefore subordinate. The garage fits within all RL 2.5 setbacks and is located behind the main residence, approximately 250 feet from the street. The floor plan is up on the screen right now, 50 feet wide by 60 feet long, and is thus the 3,000 square foot total structure. There is a 600 square foot mezzanine area also included for storage in the garage area. The elevations are on the screen. The structure will be comprised of a pitched composition shingle roof that is 27.33 feet tall. We'll have a standard garage door, RV garage door, a man door, and windows are also proposed to be provided along the north elevation of the structure, facing away from the public right-of-way. The structure will be mostly stuccoed and is proposed to be painted to match the primary residence. However, at this time, there is no color choices selected because in the near future, the applicant plans to do some other home improvements to the primary house and would like to repaint that through that process, and to maintain consistency hasn't decided a color because it will match whatever those future renovations on the primary house are to be. Here's a photo of the site. You can see the single-family residence is significantly offset from the street already. Here's an existing driveway, 17 foot wide, which will provide ingress and egress to that structure in the rear. Here's a zoomed-in photo of the primary residence. Project notices were sent to surrounding property owners contiguous to the site and no responses were received. And it's staff's recommendation that you adopt findings A through D and approve the project.
Okay. With that, anybody have any questions for staff? Okay, did the applicant wish to make a presentation or a representative? Well, welcome back. Okay, any public comments?
Nope.
Okay, we'll just close the public hearing. And let's just move to the commissioners.
Mark, tell Julie I said hi. I make a motion that we approve case number 21-156, special use permit and architectural review.
I'll second
Along
that.
with items A through D.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Ben, back to you. Do we have any information, any comments, or?
We will not be having a meeting for December 1st. We may have one on December 15th, which is the second regularly scheduled meeting for the Planning Commission. Only other thing I can note is probably on the December 13th city council meeting will probably be a study session on the AVA implementation, and so certainly look forward to that. And that's everything I have. I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and see you guys in.
Are we still a part of that? AVA, is somebody on this board a part of the AVA thing still?
Yes, Christopher Markarian and Tony Hitz are the designated Plan Commission members.
Right. And thank you, want to thank staff for their hard work on that project. I mean, it was kind of controversial, but thank you, everybody, for hanging in there on that one.
It was great. Now you guys know what it feels like to deal with defense attorneys
Yeah.
every day.
Oh, we got these attorneys here, I mean.
This is awesome. I love it.
Read what the statute says
Yeah.
and then say, does it fit or doesn't it?
And that's, you know,
And that is the clear way to maintain continuity and structure.
so my mentor taught me something very valuable, and he said, good lawyers know the law, but great lawyers know the exceptions to the law. And that's how this country was founded. We have amendments to the Constitution. So